What's going on, guys? Hopefully you're having a good weekend. As many of you know, Friday was a really rough day. Really rough. In this video, I want to talk about Bitcoin. I want to talk about some of my favorite Bitcoin miners. We're going to talk about Clsk, Iren, and Btbt, what I expect of them over the coming weeks. And before I get started, let me know in the comments below, are you jumping with joy at these prices? Are you excited? Or are you very worried? Are you second thinking your choices? Many of us that have been in these stocks since the earlier days, since 2022, 2023, buying these stocks at much lower prices, days like these are happy days, exciting days. But I guess it really depends on where you stand with these companies. Do you see it as a company? Do you see it as a stock price? Do you see it as a long-term company you want to be with? Or were you just buying because some YouTuber told you to? This video will be article light and chart heavy, but I do want to talk about this, and this is why I think Bitcoin has been selling off. It doesn't take a scientist to realize that. And it might have been the last or a previous video that I said, if it wasn't for Mt. Gox, the selling pressure and the fear surrounding it, not just the fact that Mt. Gox creditors might sell, but that the market is selling in anticipation of the creditors selling, I think that is the real fear. All you have to fear is fear itself. The market took hundreds of billions of dollars away from Bitcoin's market cap, and I do think Mt. Gox and the fear surrounding it is the main culprit. Of course, the recent Germany selling didn't help. I would also say the spot Ethereum ETFs didn't really help Bitcoin. If we saw a lot of hype there, might have drawn in more hype for Bitcoin. Instead, we sort of saw the opposite. We saw basically what Bitcoin saw, which was Grayscale selling off. But you know, to me, this is definitely slowing our momentum on our bull cycle. And while looking ahead, it might seem like things are just going to be terrible. You have all this incoming Bitcoin from Mt. Gox. Just remember that the market is forward looking. The market has already likely priced the majority of this in. And by the time it is announced that everybody got their crypto from Mt. Gox, I do suspect we would have bottomed out before that. We also have $1.5 billion worth of distribution from Genesis creditors. We have the US recently selling Bitcoin. And whether you think the Mt. Gox holders will hold, sell, there is going to be some amount of sell pressure, but I do think the fear is overblown. And I do think this is actually a positive to finally get this behind us. It is no longer going to be hanging over Bitcoin's head, the worry about the potential of paying these creditors down the road, when Bitcoin is potentially even higher in price, and it could be 18, 20, 30, 50 billion dollars to pay back creditors. Instead, it's 9 billion. Imagine if this took a couple more cycles. And tell me why it seems like sentiment is worse now, and people are just a little more fearful now with Bitcoin here at like 59, 60,000 than when Bitcoin was down here at 54, 53,000 in early July. Yes, about a month ago, Bitcoin was lower in price, yet sentiment is worse than it was then. One thing I wanted to mention, it does look like we're changing our pattern. It does look like we broke our ascending support, and now the market's trying hard to hold that 60,000 psychological support. Going over to the daily chart, you'll see we are now under the 200 MA. That might spell more trouble. Going over to the 4 hour, there is a descending resistance. Watch this blue line. We have bounced off of it. If we break it, that could give us a positive reaction. But for now, we are following this descending trend. One thing I do want to show you guys, you know, I love the divergences. You'll see on the RSI, we're pretty much bottoming out here. We are getting the same price essentially on the RSI, hitting this low point over and over again, but the price is dropping. The RSI shows that the momentum to the downside is waning. In the end, you know, do we drop down to 53,000? Do we break this recent level from early July and see lower prices for Bitcoin that we haven't seen in literally months? If the market takes it there, I can tell you who will be buying. BlackRock, MicroStrategy. Will you be buying? Now I gotta show you guys Clsk. We did break our 14 area long-term support that we have been in for a long time. We are now at prices we haven't seen since February when we went on our huge breakout on great earnings when we did our breakaway gap. You can't see it because I'm on the hourly, but on the daily there is a huge gap here from 10 to 12. And I know what you're thinking already. Gaps get filled. I'll just buy from 10 to 12. That's what everybody's thinking. There is a difference between this gap that you still can't see because I'm on the hourly and a regular common gap. This gap happened on good earnings. Huge, great earnings, profitable quarter, and amazing amount of volume. More volume than we have seen earlier in the cycle at any point. This is what's known as a breakaway gap, and they are less prone to filling than a common gap. That's not to say it won't fill and we won't get lucky to see a $12, maybe $10 Clsk, but I still find it unlikely. I want to show you Clsk's last shred of hope here, at least from a chart perspective. We are right at the 200 MA. This is not just a coincidence. Next week is our moment of truth. Are we going to bounce on this 200 MA here? Hopefully with a bounce for Bitcoin, maybe a good week in the economy, maybe news that Mt. Gox creditors got the last of their Bitcoin. Or are we going to break this 200 MA and potentially see lower prices? Also, where we are currently at is a previous resistance point We will see if it flips as a support. But let's talk about the company for a second and ignore the price, because if you're a long-term investor, you don't care if the price is $2, $5, $10, $15. You're in a successful company for the long term. You believe the stock could one day be triple digits. You believe the stock could be tens of billions of dollars. Well, what does CleanSpark expect in its upcoming earnings? And this is going to be the huge catalyst also that's either going to bring us lower or bring us back up. CleanSpark's expecting 110 million in revenue. That is a 1 million decrease over their last quarter. The vast majority of miners expect much more than a $1 million decrease quarter over quarter because of the halving that just took effect. And it is reflected in this quarter. This is the first quarter reflecting it. Think about forward guidance from here. They just increased hash rate. They've increased hash rate dramatically from when they gave the forward guidance of this quarter. Our next forward guidance could guide us somewhere around $125 million revenue, a new record for CleanSpark. And consider this, when we get our earnings reported, this $110 million quarter, what are they going to be looking at year over year? Well, a year ago, they were pulling in under $50 million. So this quarter, if they hit, which I expect them to be somewhere near it at least, they're going to get right around 100% revenue growth year over year. What were they pulling in last cycle? They were pulling in pennies. $2 million quarter, $2 million quarter, $8 million quarter, $12 million quarter, $25 million. It started growing. And then we, of course, hit the Bitcoin bear market, crypto winter. It started going back down, 31 million, 26 million. And then it started coming back up again. Bam, record quarters, record quarter for revenue, record quarter for revenue. With many of these miners, CleanSpark included, posting profitability before the halving even hit, which is a first. Remember, Bitcoin not much higher in price means all of these Bitcoin miners are profitable. A lot can change in the matter of a few months. But is CleanSpark a different company, whether it's $25, whether it's $15, whether it's $5? No, it's still the same Bitcoin miner with the same hash rate, with the same Bitcoin balance, with the same set of executives, with the same Bitcoin strategy. So if you're looking at these Bitcoin miners short term, definitely there's reason to be worried. We might not be out of the woods yet in terms of Mt. Gox selling. These miners could, who knows, post bad earnings, give bad forward guidance. Maybe Bitcoin gets knocked down even further. But I personally do not think Bitcoin has topped out this cycle yet, and I do not think the Bitcoin miners have at all either. Now I want to talk about Iren stock, and people would say the sky is falling, the world is over, when in reality this stock is still 7x from its bear market lows. So I definitely understand the panic if you recently bought and you're like, why is this stock dropping? What did I do? You bought at the worst time, you bought the peak, you bought the tip. Now is this a better time to add? I do think so. It's definitely a better time to add than at previous peaks. Can we see Iren stock come down lower? If you follow the trend, if you follow this long-term pattern it's been in, definitely. I mean, we can come down towards previous resistances back towards 8. That would be a great bouncing off point. We can come down towards our 200 MA back at 650. That would be another great bouncing off point. We can come potentially, if the market wants to take it there, we can come all the way into the 4s, 5s. The question is, are you going to be buying there, or are you going to be avoiding it and waiting until it runs to new all-time highs to buy? And look in history, there was a set of buyers here. After this run up and people got feared out, people said, oh, this stock's going back down to the bear market lows. There's people picking it up here. There's people picking it up down here after this big drop. People picking it up down here at the big drop. At the time, it might have seemed a little scary. At the time, they might have thought maybe it's going to go even lower. Maybe it's going to go to those crypto lows, those Bitcoin bear market lows. But it didn't. It maintained its long-term support. It maintained its overall bull market uptrend in our overall bull market for Bitcoin. Some people might be looking at Iren right now and just be like, this has got to be the end. This is over. What a horrible investment. This is a terrible company, terrible stock. But then you might have some people that bought a year, 2 years ago that are saying, wow, I'm so glad I bought this company. I'm so excited for the long term of this company. And I know I keep mentioning long term, but even looking at this cycle, I do think the Bitcoin miners are going higher. And this is our chance. If we are really entering a recession, here's Bitcoin's chance to shine. This is why it was created. Why was Bitcoin created? Because you can't trust the banks, you can't trust currency, it always gets printed into infinity. And that's what's going to continue to happen, recession or not. And also when you look at Iren's recent run, it has retraced to the 0.618 Fibonacci. When you get a big spike like this, there is going to be profit taking. To me, this is nothing more than a shakeout in an overall bull market. And getting out right now, if you look at the 4-year cycles, would be literally the worst time. I also want to talk about Btbt. This one has been coming down a bit. But I mean, just look at the beautiful uptrend it's been in. It is continuing to stair step higher and higher and higher. Revenue keeps growing. They keep branching into AI. They have a well-diversified business. They stake Ethereum, they mine Bitcoin, and they're getting into AI. And AI is quickly outpacing revenue from Bitcoin mining. Just like other mining stocks, it rips and it dips along the way. There will be people left holding the bag that buy at the top, thinking it's gonna just keep going and keep going, when in reality these stocks are going to pull back. There will be retracements, there will be shakeouts, there will be times when the market makes all retail extremely bearish and question their decision making. And I do think this is one of those times. Btbt has been another one that has seen insane revenue growth recently. And of course, with the halving involved, we do see a dip in revenue quarter over quarter. However, when you look, year over year, we're talking about some insane growth. Despite the halving taking half the rewards away, we didn't see a decrease in revenue year over year. The miners overall are growing their revenue. And of course, anything can happen, maybe the top is in for Bitcoin. I personally highly doubt it. This will be the weakest cycle we have ever had. And when you're seeing money flowing into the spot Bitcoin ETFs, when you're seeing companies adopting a Bitcoin standard where they want to buy Bitcoin, when you have government leaders talking about creating Bitcoin reserves, and when you're in the halving year, this isn't even 2025. If you just follow the cycle, this is the time to be bullish on Bitcoin. But what do you guys think? Do you think this cycle is at its end? Do you think this is going to be the shortest halving cycle in history? Or are you taking advantage? Will you buy Bitcoin if it goes lower, or do you plan to sell if it goes lower? And let me know if you guys see these Bitcoin miners as long-term investments or short-term investments. If they're seen as short-term, are you setting stop losses? But everyone's got a different strategy. Let me know yours. Thanks as always for watching, guys, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.